Chapter 77. Blue. I try not to fidget as I sit on the floor of Shauna's carriage. I have to put both hands over my knees to stop myself from scratching, but even that doesn't feel like enough. I feel jittery, but I don't know why. It's not like drumming my fingers against the floor will help anything. I'm just glad that I'm sitting on my heels, so there's no way I can bounce my leg. "Well, this is going to be exciting," Shauna starts, obviously trying to make conversation, though I'm not sure why. Worse, I have no real response. I just smile and nod, hoping to whatever will listen that it seems natural. What's normally enough of a passive response to get Shauna talking isn't cutting it. Her look hardens, and though she isn't actually looking at me, I still feel responsible. The odd half-glare Shauna seems to be sending the floor ends a half-second later as Ande just puts his head in her lap. She rises to the bait, stroking her hand through his hair. It's so different from how it was only months ago. So very different. And the thought makes my heart ache. Ande and Shauna are different. On paper, they might as well be polar opposites. They shouldn't have gotten along, and yet here they are, looking at each other as if they've been together their whole lives, like nothing could separate them, as though every known thing in this universe would be wrong if they weren't together. I suppose the world would look wrong if they weren't together, at least for me. I haven't known any other familiar under Shauna, nor would I care to. Ande's always been kind to me, even when we really didn't know each other. He let me copy his behaviors when I was out of my depth. He spoke to me as an equal, even though he should have known he outranked me by several leagues. He's become one of my closest friends. And Shauna's the only reason I know Ande. She's Master's friend, so I would have seen a lot of her regardless. I can't say we've always been close. I remember her harsh words when my master had picked me out from the market, but I like to think that we'd gotten past that. She was kind when she didn't have to be. A product, I like to imagine, of her familiar's influence. Her nature has been giving over to something else in Ande's presence. She's learning to be reserved when the situation calls for it, patient and tempered. "So, what was all that about?" Shauna asks evenly, her hand still running through Ande's hair. It's as if she's actively trying to make my point. There's this softer side of her that she's still learning about, that she still has trouble with when Ande isn't around. "I don't know." It's the best answer I can come up with, the only honest one, and though I know Shauna usually likes something a little more definitive, the lost look on my face must tell her something. "Well, he said something about going to see your friends, something about being sorry about last time and wanting to give you a proper send-off," she rambles, something so uncharacteristic of Shauna as a whole that I don't know what to do. It's not like I can help much. I don't know why I'm going with them today. I don't know why Kara doesn't want me at the house. I wasn't expecting to go back. Kara's last exam was yesterday. There was nothing left to do. Kara isn't even coming with us. There's nothing for him to do, so he's just dumped me on his friend. So he doesn't have to deal with me? It seems so unlike him, and yet I feel like I don't know what to expect anymore. But something in her words mirrors what Kara had been telling me earlier this morning. "Oh," I really shouldn't be interrupting her, but the rambling, it just seems so wrong coming from her. "Master came to pick me up a little early, and I guess he startled some of the familiars." I parrot back what Kara had told me, even though it doesn't really make much sense to me either. At least it seems to be enough for Shauna. She nods along with what I've said and goes on for a bit about the proper apology that Kara seems to owe me. I have to bite my lip to keep from laughing. She thinks he owes me an apology? The tightness in my throat doesn't go away. and it only takes me a few seconds before the impulse to laugh shifts over to tears. I shouldn't cry, though the thought doesn't help how blurry the floor becomes. It's not his fault. It was mine. I was bad. And it's been so long since I've had to confront that thought in my mind that it hurts all the more. Maybe that's why this stings so bad. Kara had always been so kind, so accepting. Even when I failed him, even when I wasn't enough, he never said it was my fault. There's an impulse to just curl up and cry. Present company be damned. I wonder if Shauna would let me stay in the carriage until her tests were done and I could go back home without ever having to step into the school. It feels so wrong without Kara by my side. I don't feel safe. My hands are shaking so badly that I have to press them together, so hard that my knuckles turn white in order to get them to stop. It was never this bad before. When Shauna took me to school for that week that Kara had been suspended, I never got like this. It was uncomfortable being at school without my master, but I still felt safe. Shauna was entrusted with my safety, and Ande made sure that no one would even try to bother me. But, best of all, I always knew that Kara would be at home when I got back. He'd have dinner on the table or in the oven, table set, and greet me with a smile. And we'd eat and pretend to talk when all I could do was bask in the safety he seemed to radiate. We'd be with each other, comfortable and content. We'd snuggle and drink tea and read, do anything that would keep us together until we had to part ways the next morning. As our carriage rolls to a stop, there's a stinging in my throat, and I have to blink quickly to get the tears out of my eyes. I revisit my earlier plan. Shauna isn't terribly cruel. If I really cried, if I curled up and cried and refused to leave the carriage, she might let me stay here. On the other hand, I wouldn't fit under the seats like that disastrous time I'd injured my feet. Shauna's seats aren't bench style. They've got little cubbies underneath them. There's no room to squeeze under, no matter how determined I am. I shouldn't make a scene. She'd probably take me back to Kara if I did, and he'd get mad that he didn't get his day away from me like he'd planned. It's better to just go into the school. I can stay in the care center, or maybe just sit in the quiet peace of the gym. I had no plans to come back until next semester. I told all the familiars that come to my little training sessions that yesterday would be my last day. I just don't know what I'm going to do. I follow quietly after Ande, my body moving on its own until I realize we've made it to the care center. "All right. What's wrong with you?" Ande asks with a tired groan as he snuggles into one of the beanbag cushions. I can't help the way I look around. I can only attribute it to my fraying mental state that I don't disguise the nervous motion. It doesn't really matter anyways. There's only a few people here. The attendant seems to be putting actual effort into his disinterest, absorbed into whatever book he's reading and physically turned away from us. Not that the other familiars are much better. There's only 2 here. One's already asleep, and the other is that same scary-looking jackal that's been there since my first day. He's still tethered to the wall, but he shows no signs of interest in us. Still, I can't shake the feeling of prying eyes. "What's wrong? I never said something was wrong." Even as I speak, I know I'm not making a good case. It doesn't help that I have to physically pry my hand away from my wrist. The attempt to hide the reddened mark behind my back is pathetic. I can't help but feel that this is all a little unfair. I expected to be allowed to just sit with my thoughts today, at least until I could go back home. Ande never starts these conversations, not without some sort of cue from the group. I guess Shauna's rubbing off on him just as much as he rubs off on her. Ande quirks his brow and fixes me with a pointed look that all but confirms Shauna's influence. It's incredible how many words he's implying, how strongly he's calling Minotaur manure even though he's not saying anything. I bite the inside of my cheek, wrestling with myself. I don't want to keep it a secret, even though Kara told me how much he values his privacy. It's not like it's something that affects him, though, and he's had a long time to object to my friendship with Ande. He hadn't set any limits on what I could talk with him about, and with what we've already shared with each other, a little more won't be what tips the scales. I tuck my feet underneath me and try to will the tension out of my body as I search for the right words. "Master's pissed," is what I eventually say. I bite my lip and start studying the pattern of the carpet underneath me so I don't have to look at Ande. There's really nothing else to say. Master's mad, and I am screwed. I don't know what I can do to make up for my mistake, but I want to be forgiven. I want to get past this. I want this whole thing to be no more than a distant memory. It's not like it's impossible. Master's already forgiven so many different things. Stars, when we first came together, he should have gotten rid of me so many thousands of times over. But he's always forgiven me. He's always treated me gently, with more kindness and more respect than I deserve. Then again, he's never been this angry. Angry at all, really. Maybe that's why all this feels so wrong. All my failings were treated like they didn't matter. And I suppose, to him, they didn't. He always held me to some other, unnamed standard. It didn't matter how bad I was at being a proper pet, at being a good familiar. That wasn't what he wanted. I want to go back to how things were. "Oh, so it's Master now," Ande chuckles. "Don't do this to me, Ande. Not today." I don't like the whiny tone my voice takes, but there's nothing I can do to stop it. Why does he have to tease like this? Why did I ever make such a stupid mistake and use Kara's name like that in front of him? He's teased me like this every chance he can get since then, so long as there's no one around that might get us in trouble. Normally I don't mind too much, but right now it's just a bitter reminder of the warmth that used to exist between me and my master. The warmth that I've lost. All right. Ande shifts on his beanbag so that he's looking at me, but his expression does not turn solemn or contemplative like I'm used to. He's got that same lopsided grin fixed to his face, like he doesn't believe he's really going to be talking through something serious with me. "And what exactly happened to make him so pissed at you? The light of his life, the shine of his stars." I swat at Ande, but he just fixes me with a pointed stare that has me curling my hands into fists. I'm not going to swing at him, but it doesn't stop the annoyance that builds in my chest. Even if we were to have a spat, Ande would probably hold me at arm's length with one hand like I was some angry, sputtering child. Still, I find it frustrating that he doesn't even pretend like I've done damage. He doesn't even have the decency to look hurt by my actions. All at once, whatever fight was in me drains out. What the hell am I doing? I don't want Ande to hurt, not in any way. I just wanted him to take me seriously. Stars, I'm a mess. I shouldn't be like this. Feeling bad isn't an excuse. If I did something like this with anyone else, they would have been well within their rights to... Maybe it's not Kara. Maybe it's me that's changed. I keep doing things that I shouldn't, taking action when I normally would have stayed quiet. Since when did I think that was okay? Kara put up with it, but that was when it wasn't bothering him. Now that I've officially thrown myself off the deep end, I can't imagine that the nonchalance will continue. There will be repercussions. I can't tell if it's better or worse that my punishment seems to be a low priority for my master. Taking in breath is suddenly the hardest thing in the world. My mind and my lungs can't seem to agree, and the result is a choked wheezing that makes me wish I could just forget about breathing altogether. There's so many things that I shouldn't have done, but there's no taking them back now. Ande does look worried now, but I try not to let myself think as I bow my head in silent apology. Ande, great big softy that he is, doesn't pry, doesn't ask or prod at my distress. He just brushes some of the hair out of my face, gentle, even though he doesn't have to be. "I fucked up." The words come without my prompting, without any thought behind them, but it doesn't stop them from being true. "You're fine," Ande says. The lilting tone from before is gone now. Stars. The relief is a palpable sensation for me, the guilty weight lifting from my shoulders at Ande's words. Still. Fine, then. I start again, ignoring the crack in my voice that completely negates the nonchalant tone I'm trying to capture. "I fucked up with Master." "And?" Ande quirks a brow like the confession confuses him. Stars. Did he think this was such a frequent occurrence that I shouldn't be worried? While my relationship with Kara is rather unorthodox, I could say the same thing about Ande and Shauna. "Ande, I fucked up bad," I persist, forcing my voice to stay low lest we attract unwanted attention. "He threw a bowl. He never gets mad, never. I think I crossed a line." "He threw something at you?" Ande tilts his head to the side as a look of shock and confusion spreads across his features. "No, not at me. We were talking, and it was all getting out of hand, and I was trying to say something, and he threw the bowl." Stars, I can't even remember what I was trying to say. It was probably something stupid, to get myself into more trouble. The whole of my mind recoils as I try to piece together more coherent thoughts out of that night. Honestly, I'd love nothing more than to get those memories out of my head, put them in a box, and never look at them again. But the rest of me seems to be against it. In fact, my mind seems obsessed with dredging up the memory any time I have even the slightest reprieve. It's a bad memory. It's not productive, and it doesn't help me with anything. And yet it demands to be watched, played over and over again until I'm sick to my stomach at the spiraling thoughts it causes. The argument is so out of place. I think that, more than anything, is what draws so much of my attention to it. We'd gotten so far without this kind of disagreement that I'm sure if I can just piece together the way to make up for it, then forgiveness might be attainable. My master is very kind. He's generous with his foolish pet, even when I'm too stupid to know how to make things better. He helps when it hurts, and he chases away all these bad thoughts. I bite the inside of my cheek so hard I taste blood. The thoughts are the stupid ramblings of a pet that doesn't know any better, but that just makes it all the more terrifying. I thought those statements were true. Complete truths that I could anchor myself to when considering how to deal with my master. And yet, last night, it all just goes against everything that I know about Kara, everything that I thought I knew. It shakes the foundations of who he is as a person in my mind. The new information refuses to integrate with the image I had constructed, and now I have to face the fact that I might have been wrong all along. Kara's not violent. He would never hurt me. Kara is kind and generous. He forgives all types of failings. Kara gave me choices. Kara told me to use his name. I feel the beginnings of tears sting my eyes. All of that is wrong, isn't it? If I'd been wrong about something like this, well, how right could I have been about my assessment of my master? That doesn't sound like him. I nearly flinch at the sound of Ande's voice, somehow so lost in thought that I manage to forget that my friend was right there in front of me. "Do you want me to ask my mistress about it?" he asks, and I feel my cheeks burn. Stars, no! The fewer people in this, the better, I mumble, trying to be discreet about the way I rub my hands over my eyes. Master probably wouldn't appreciate his friend coming to him with personal details, because his familiar couldn't keep his mouth shut. Again. Besides, What would she even be able to do? It takes me a second to realize that I've spoken the question out loud.
Well, I suppose she could always burn his house down,
Ande answers, hand to his chin like he's considering the logistics of that particular plan. Ande, be serious, I pout, but I'm not entirely sure that he's joking with me. It doesn't help that his expression remains the same, even as he nods in my direction.
All right. She could ask him point blank what's wrong. That might be helpful,
Ande posits, and I struggle to find a place to put my hands as the irrepressible urge to squirm overcomes me. Stars, you think she would do that? I mumble to the floor, but Ande doesn't appear to be disheartened.
Well, yes. And if this morning was any indication, she will be doing it regardless. But I think it would actually be a course of action best served through you,
he answers, and I feel my heart stutter in my chest. What? I can't help but gape at him.
Talk to him.
He says it more insistently now, as though I'm a child who's not getting his point. No, I got that. I try to backtrack, but Ande cuts me off.
Then what's the trouble?
He asks, and suddenly it feels like I've backed myself into a corner. I can't do that! I all but yelp. The sound is not dignified, but I'm well past worrying about dignity at this point.
And why not?
Why not? My mind goes blank as all the excuses fly out of my head. It's not proper. It's not my place. But if I'm going to find out what is my place, what is proper, what Kara wants from me, and how we can heal from this, then we are going to have a conversation. Even though it's not my place to initiate it, even though I could get into trouble, it will be better to get this stuff out into the open rather than have us tiptoe around each other for the rest of our lives. When did you get to be so wise? I mumble, trying not to think too hard about the way Ande fixed my problem in 2 minutes while looking more hopelessly tired than Kara has these past few days.
Shauna,
Ande answers without hesitation, following it up with a yawn as he snuggles back into the beanbag.
I was utterly hopeless at this kind of stuff before. Honestly, I think if this had dragged out any longer, she might have tied the two of you up and not let you go until you'd poured your hearts out to each other.
He used her name. I can't stop the smile from blooming on my face, but I keep the fact to myself. Ande's tired. I can rub it in more thoroughly later when he will be more conscious of it. And this is a tactic she's used on you? I prod, poking at his cheeks even as he squirms away. Like this, he's cuter than a man more than twice my weight has any right to be, and the way he puffs out his cheeks like a frustrated squirrel is far too endearing, even as he fixes me with his deadest stare. I blame Enoki. He's the one who started the whole poke the sleeping bear ritual.
No, just one she threatens. A lot.
He chuckles, waving off my hand and closing his eyes. He snuggles back into the cushion, but those words leave me a little disquieted. Shauna's been odd the past few times I've seen her. It's more significant than just a shift in attitude dependent on whether Ande's present or not. She was relieved beyond what seemed reasonable when she received her quals score, and yet she looked so frustrated by the end of the day, like there was something bothering her. I shudder at the thought of someone purposefully antagonizing Shauna. Whatever it is, I doubt it'll be standing for long. Still, the melancholy had been affecting Ande as well. Your mistress, she's been upset the past few days? I hazard a guess. I don't know why I'm pushing. It's none of my business. And even though Ande and I are quite open with each other, we don't usually go prying into each other's lives. We talk things through with each other, but that's always been based on what we're willing to talk about. It's always been our choice what to reveal.
Yes,
Ande answers, the monosyllabic response only serving to highlight that I'm overstepping. He's suddenly more of the tight-lipped bear that I know him to be. Are you having any trouble with that? I try to keep my tone even. I shouldn't be prying, but checking in isn't inherently bad. I just want to make sure he's all right. I don't need to know the details of what's making Shauna so distressed.
It's not at me. Not really,
He says quietly, and it's only after he clears his throat that I recognize the misty-eyed look that he's trying not to let me see.
She doesn't like situations that she's not in control of, and traveling back to her family. She made a promise, and she wants to honor it. It's just hard on her,
he whispers, tugging at the green ribbon around his wrist as though to remind himself that it's there. It's an odd accessory. Its pale hue doesn't match his eyes, and I don't think I've seen him with it before, though Shauna might have been wearing something similar. I would probably have a better idea if I'd been paying any attention in the cabin. Green's not Shauna's color, and yet Ande's wearing it like it's something incredibly precious. And if Shauna's wearing the same, well, really all that I can say for certain is that it means something to them. It's pointless to speculate without any other information. Oh! I say intelligently, but it's more to give a response than anything else. There's not really much else to say without prying. Ande's allowed to keep his secrets. He has his own life outside of me. It just frustrates me that I can't be of help to him when he's helped me with my problems. Just talk to the man. Stars. I drag my hand over my face as I replay our conversation. Is this what I've been avoiding? A simple talk? That's all that we'd need to settle the issues between us? Probably not, but it's the easiest and fastest way to start us off. It all seems so simple, so stupidly simple when he put it like that. Will it really be that easy? I suppose there's nothing I can do but try. Ande sleeps on and off, offering the warm place next to him as we wait. I figure he and Shauna must have plans after her tests are done today. Otherwise, she probably wouldn't have brought him to school like this. He said that the symptoms should clear up after candlelights, and I can't imagine that she'd put him in an uncomfortable position for anything less than necessity. Either way, even if I have trouble actually falling asleep, it's nice to just sit and snuggle and engage in that casual physical contact that I've been lacking lately. It's odd to think the semester's over. The school has taken over so much of my life that I find it a little unsettling to know that I won't have to think about it for a while. I won't have to worry about professors or classes or behaving like a familiar. I can't help the smile that comes at the thought of not having to worry about upsetting the mages with my continued existence. There's only a 2-month break, but it's better than nothing. And after next semester, Heshinda should be nice. Heshinda, the season with the longer break of the scholastic year. I press my face into the soft material of Ande's shirt. He's so deeply asleep that he doesn't even shift at my movements, and I can't help but feel relieved. I don't need him to comment on the state of my face. The blush across my features surprises even me. Look at me, making plans for the future. For the start of Venra. For my birthday. Kara had been the one to start me on that. My birthday. He said we'd do something together. I hadn't said that I wanted anything, but I still don't know what's reasonable. It's never been a celebration before. I'd never even really thought about it. But I suppose I still have time. There's a lot to do before Venra is upon us. Candlelights is coming up, for one thing. It's another celebration that I've never quite participated in before. As pets, we had our own little acknowledgement of the holiday, much in the same way that other holidays played out. Masters were occupied, and sometimes that meant we didn't have to worry about anything. The whole rest of the household would have responsibilities, especially if we had to host the parties. There was always a lot to handle. Food, guests, presents. Presents. Candlelights has an exchange of presents. At least, I'm pretty sure. It's been a part of the celebration as many times as I've seen it. I wonder what I could get for Kara. I've never really had much luck presenting things. Even among the other pets that I'd managed to get along with, we traded favors rather than presenting gifts. It was more helpful than anything we could actually get hold of. It wouldn't do to take something and bring unnecessary trouble, just for a present. My mind wanders as I try to imagine what Kara would like. Maybe one of those odd plants that he had loved so much on our jaunt through the woods. There were plenty of things that interested him then. Maybe he'd like something like that. One of the berries or flowers. I fight the wave of melancholy that comes with the memory. Kewin. I'd never asked what happens to bound creatures when their objects are destroyed. I wasn't brave enough. Not only am I reluctant to admit to my snooping, but if I don't know for sure, then I can pretend like the little imp is still fine. I can pretend that it just means that he's not stuck to the object anymore, or it just hurt him a little, and then he could get away. With his foresight, I can't imagine he would have taken his destruction lightly. He would have fought harder. He would have stopped Kara from handing him over. I'm not entirely sure what we could have done. He was property of the school that got used for an examination. We couldn't have kept him. He probably knew that too, but I feel like we could have done something. I can pretend that he didn't fight because he knew something I didn't. He knew it would be fine, and not because he knew better than to fight the inevitable. Still, Kara had seemed just as enamored by the nuts and berries of the forest as Kewin had been. Perhaps that would be something he'd like. I dismiss the idea before it fully forms. It's dangerous and stupid. The two of us together nearly got killed in the forest. Though, looking back, a lot of that did seem to be my own inadequacy. I wasn't used to the outdoor adventure. I wasn't helpful. I got drugged by a plant and forced him to deal with that. My cheeks are on fire as I remember the bits and pieces that I retained from the experience. Stars. Why did that happen? I can barely believe it, and I lived through it. Going to the forest is a dangerous and stupid idea. But maybe the greenhouse? It's the school's forest of horrors. It would make sense that they would have some samples. They probably have all manner of rare magical plants. If I could get in there... I can't tell which idea is more dangerous. I don't need to steal a whole flower. I try to rationalize it to myself. What's the likelihood that they would notice one missing flower anyways? No. If it's a rare or magical plant like I'd want, a whole flower would surely be noticed. But would they notice a seed gone? With Kara's skill, he could make his own, as long as he has that seed, no matter how hard it is to grow. They wouldn't notice just one seed. Even if they did, why would someone steal just one seed? It would be more believable that one of the students misplaced it and didn't bother to note it. I could sign myself out. He already expected me to spend the day at the gym, and with all the students more or less busy with their finals... No, I can't do that. I'll get caught. I just know I will. And if I don't, then Kara will still be holding something that is stolen property. I don't need to get him into any more trouble. And I need to stop thinking there will be no consequences for sneaking around without my master's permission. My mind flashes to the near heart attack I'd had when we went out, when I'd dressed up and played at being human, when he'd said it didn't matter what people didn't know. I thought he had found out about my little excursion to the library, even though it would have been so unlike him, My mind couldn't let go of the fear that the whole night was just some elaborate way to make a scene and show me what happened when his familiar didn't know his place. I had a mistress who was fond of the more public variety of discipline, but that was something I was at least familiar with. I couldn't begin to imagine the punishment for hiding my ears, what the people at that establishment might have done to me if they knew I was only fooling them. It would have been so easy. Unlike Mistress, Kara would have had no need to list out my infractions. He could have just knocked my hat off and let everything unfold without him having to do anything to influence the crowd. The perfect punishment for a stupid familiar who went around lying about having his master's permission. It would have been so easy. But he hadn't. He hadn't. I shift away from Ande, blinking away the tears in my eyes. It would have been easy, but it also would have been terribly unlike Kara. He wouldn't have concocted such an elaborate scheme to hurt me. He's never wanted to hurt me, even when I'm bad. But that was an assumption I'd had about him before last night. It was something I had in my mind when I still thought him incapable of harsh words and punishments, before he threw things and sent me away so he wouldn't have to deal with me. I don't really know him. I try to shake the thought out of my head. I can find some other gift. There's plenty of things that Kara likes that won't have me risking the wrath of the mages. I still have the coins that he gave me. They're stashed away under the wrapping in the box with my hairpiece. I could use those to find something he likes. Maybe a book, a journal, some cooking implements? I try not to feel hopeless as Shauna picks us up. I'm tempted to ask her to keep me for the night, even though I know I need to talk to my master. It still doesn't make the thought any easier or less intimidating. He won't be back until late tonight anyways, so it's not like anything productive is going to happen. But I realize how unfair that is. Shauna has a party tonight too, and asking her to let me stay over when I've yet to even see her house, when Ande is still a sleepy ball of fluff who couldn't attend a guest, is far too much. I wave goodbye to Shauna from the door, waiting until I see the carriage disappear down the road before pushing open the door. "I'm home!" I call out, but even before it resonates through the empty house, I know I won't be getting a response. The house is still clean, but I can see a number of things out of place, moved or put away. The robe he'd gotten yesterday is missing, and that just cements what I already know. Kara's already gone. I just wish it didn't feel like something inside me is missing. I can't bring myself to cook anything, and while I go through the motions of opening the icebox and staring blankly into the pantry, I can find nothing that changes those thoughts. I resign myself to an early night. I fold my clothes, for lack of anything better to do, rather than out of a sense of personal neatness, changing into one of my nightshirts, because reaching for one of Kara's is doing bad things to my heart. His smell is all over this room, even though it seems like an eternity since he's been here. His smell is in the sheets, the pillows, and I try not to be any more pitiful by shoving my face into either of those like I need his scent to breathe. I miss him so much it's a near physical ache. I can't help but wonder what he's doing right now. Is he dancing with Genevieve, laughing with her parents, forgetting about his lonely little common cat back home? I throw away that scrap of pride I've been clinging to and jump into the bed, shoving my face into one of the pillows and breathing deeply before I can start crying. It could be worse, I remind myself. It could be a lot worse. Still, it doesn't seem to stop the emotion welling up in my chest, or the choked feeling at the back of my throat. Is it so wrong to want things to go back to the way they were? Even though I know it's not my place, I want him here instead of at her house. I want him to hold me and tell me all manner of lies that will make me feel better. I'm so caught up in my spiraling thoughts, I almost miss the sound of the door closing downstairs. My heart stutters in my chest. I didn't hear any knocking. I'd been so consumed in my own musings that I wasn't paying attention. I bite the inside of my cheek to keep myself quiet. Who could be downstairs? There's no way Kara's back yet. Even though I wasn't exactly keeping track of time, as I was lost in my own head, it's still light outside. There's no way he's back yet. So who the fuck is downstairs? I didn't lock the door. The thought comes, and I have to bite back a curse. It could be anyone downstairs. We have plenty of neighbors, but Kara's not really close with any of them. Certainly none of them would have a reason to pop over and come in.
Are you sure?
I can hear voices downstairs, muffled and quiet. I slip out of bed, padding as close as I dare to the door of the bedroom. It's more than one person, otherwise they wouldn't be asking questions out loud. They aren't trying to be quiet, so when the other one speaks up, it's easy to hear from the more advantageous position. "Yeah, he left for Jen's already." The voices sound so familiar, but
where do you think the kitty cat is?
Stars! I lurch back, away from the doorframe as my heart seizes in my chest. It's Kalu. Kalu, and I'm betting his two friends. Why would they be here? Kara isn't home. But it sounds like they already know that. Why do they even know where he lives? He's not a public figure. He's not someone with a big estate that would be easy to find. This is a residential neighborhood. Why are they here? And why are they looking for me? There's an impulse to run. Adrenaline has my heart leaping into my throat. And I'm suddenly terribly claustrophobic. I want to run, but there's nowhere to run, and the longer I stay still, the more it seems like these walls are closing in on me. I'm on the second floor, so there's no way to get out without going past them. I really only have one option. I get down onto the floor, squeezing myself under the bed. It's all I can do to try to control my breathing. I'm just glad that Kara doesn't have a ton of clutter. I don't have to compete for space. The only other thing under the bed is a collection of dust bunnies. I can't hear them from down here, but I have to imagine they're still creeping around downstairs. I'm scared. The situation is so far beyond anything that I am equipped to handle. I have no idea what to do. I suppose I should tell them to leave. If I was braver, or if Kara was here, I might have dared. They've invaded my master's house. He didn't allow them entry, and he isn't even home. Something that they apparently know. They shouldn't be here. They don't have the right to be. But I don't have a death wish. I stay where I am. The quiet extends, and eventually the adrenaline in my system starts to dissipate. But that sinking feeling in my gut returns in time with the sound of footsteps on the stairs. I shouldn't be surprised, not when Kara's room is the first door coming up from the landing, but I still startle when they push the door open.
Wow, nerd alert,
Jay chuckles, and while I can only see their feet, I'm a little troubled that I was right. All three of them are here.
Like you didn't fucking know that already.
Catherine giggles. She makes her way to the far wall, seemingly engaged with something as she stops there for a while. I try to remember if there's anything there, anything out, but my mind is such a blank slate of terror that I can't remember anything in the room to save my life.
Still, this guy,
Jay continues, making his way to the bookshelves. They seem content to wander. I don't plan to interrupt them or bring any kind of attention to my presence.
Where the fuck is his familiar?
Kalu snarls, all but slamming the door behind him.
You'd think he'd have the thing properly trained, given how highly he spoke of it.
Jay hums noncommittally, sitting himself down on the bed as the others move. I bite down on the inside of my cheek to keep from making any noise. My ears press flat against my skull, and it feels like my body is drawn in such a tense line that it wouldn't take much to make me snap.
Oh, he's not the first person to oversell,
Catherine says. I don't like that I can hear the smile in her voice, like she knows something she shouldn't. I'm not prepared when she peeks under the bed. I don't even have the presence of mind to scream when she smiles, unkind and dangerous. I'm frozen under her gaze. I feel like some bug trapped under a slide of glass.
There you are,
she exclaims, and that smile grows impossibly larger. She reaches out and grabs me by the wrist. Even though I know it's going to make it worse, I can't stop myself from struggling as she tries to pull me out. My strength is no match for her, even given the awkward angle that she finds herself in. All she has to do is yank, and my shoulder lights up with pain. It's more than enough of a distraction to halt my squirming, and she takes advantage of that, dragging me out from my hiding place.
Oh, come on now. Why don't you stop squirming?
She asks like I'm some petulant little creature that has no reason to act as I am, as though she's being very kind and not crushing my arm in her bruising grip. I don't have a response for her. My mind seems to be well beyond the state of terror that allows for words to form. I feel so much more vulnerable, so much more claustrophobic than I had underneath the bed, though perhaps that is more from the combined effect of the 3 sets of eyes on me, and the fact that they all tower over me, even as Catherine pulls me up from the floor. There's nothing I can do. I feel like I can't breathe. They found me, and there's no one else in this house. My hands are shaking, and there's a low keening sound that takes me a minute to recognize as my own. Catherine seems to find the action amusing. She pulls me closer, stroking my head in an action I'm fairly certain is meant to be soothing, but it's undercut by the way her nails dig into my skin. Please, I start, hating how high and shaky my voice is, hating just how little my protest will mean, to claim Kara's protection. But if they cared about that, then they wouldn't have come in here without his permission. Still, it's my only avenue for an objection. My master will be very displeased if he knows you harmed me. I close my eyes, forcing myself to breathe. Just because my objection isn't technically wrong doesn't mean I won't still be hit for it. It wouldn't be the first time, and I'm expecting at least that much for my audacity here. But I don't hear the crack of one of their hands on my skin. All I hear is Jay's voice.
Oh, that's just cruel. He didn't even tell the poor thing.
What?
He's always been too soft on him. That was what started all these problems in the first place.
Catherine speaks with a pouty tone as she brings herself even closer, nuzzling gently where her cheek is touching mine. My heart is beating so loudly in my chest that I'm surprised none of them can hear it. I steel myself before taking a peek around me, but neither Catherine nor Jay seem too concerned with my propriety. It's only Kalu who's studying my face with a directness that makes me avert my gaze. He looks like he was considering something. He looks pleased. What the hell are they talking about?
Darling.
It's not Kalu's voice that startles me. It's the odd emotion in his words. His tone is sad, but nearly affectionate. Pity, my mind supplies, just a half-second too late as I try to keep myself from flinching away from his hand. Pity. It's surprising, just as jarring as the term of endearment he used. It only takes a half-hearted dismissive gesture from Kalu for Jay to take a half-step back and Catherine to reluctantly peel herself off of me. Still, I can't say I feel too much better as the man closes the distance between us himself. There's a part of me that wants to dive back under the bed, squirm and fuss and dig my nails, blunt as they are, into the carpet and refuse to let go. But something keeps me anchored to the spot, unable to so much as breathe as the man closes in, because if what I'm hearing is right...
Your master isn't your master anymore. I am,
he says, very simply, and the floor goes out from under me. His words seem so terribly mundane, and yet flourishes aren't necessary for a fact. There's a dry feeling in my throat as the whole of my being seems to stop. The spot I'm staring into the carpet underneath me blurs, but in the moment I can't tell if it's just me or if I'm actually getting sucked into the floor. I'd settle for passing out. Some part of my mind lets me know where my standards are for exiting this situation, and I can't even bring myself to be embarrassed. Unfortunately, neither situation manifests, because when my stubborn lungs start to burn, I give in without so much as a fight. Reality returns far too soon for my liking, and I find that none of this is a dream. It's not some wild, elaborate scenario that my mind concocted to torture myself with in Kara's absence. When I open my eyes, all three of them are still there. They're still in Kara's bedroom, still surrounding me, and their words are still echoing in my head.
What?
I croak out. What little of my mental faculties that are still functioning demand that I clarify, no matter how impertinent it is.
Insolent little thing!
Catherine's voice is high and angry, and idly I realize that I've already discovered a threshold for the actions they'll find tolerable. Now, if only my mind was working well enough that I could file that kind of information away.
No, no. If Kara didn't tell him, then it isn't his fault. He shouldn't have to face as strict a punishment when he thought he was obeying orders,
Kalu says, uncharacteristically tolerant, for what I've heard from Avery. I'm not mentally present enough to hear her response, but I do see the way she huffs and crosses her arms. My head spins, and suddenly a million little things all crash together. Suddenly, the distance we had since Qualls takes on a new meaning. Kalu hadn't set limitations on when Kara could call him back. He'd said he'd be willing to take me whenever Kara was bored of me. When he got bored, or when he realized how truly useless I was. I'd failed him so many thousands of times, but Qualls must have set the nail in the coffin. I'd talked about him behind his back. I'd interfered with him academically, and as if that wasn't bad enough, I'd violated Kara's privacy, something I knew he valued from the moment he brought me into this house. I'd been so stupid, so irrevocably stupid. But was that it? Was that really the reason? Was that why Kara had finally decided to abandon me? My teeth grind together even as I try to arrange my features in careful neutrality. I have to give him credit. He didn't just turn me out onto the streets. It would have been bad, especially at this time of year. I'm no longer so broken and starved that my body would give out on me at the slightest difficulty, but the cold is hard to bear. I try not to think of the warmth of his touch, of the way he wrapped me up in his own scarf when I'd not heeded his warnings about the frost. Was it really only a day ago? He'd been so careful then. I had seen the affectionate glint in his eyes, the way he held my hand, the melancholy when we had to part. He treated me like I mattered, like I was precious, something he held dear. I try desperately to pull my mind away from the scent that's still in the bed, clinging to the thick, warm sheets. Those sheets are among the many things that had so scared me when I first came here, being allowed to touch and use my master's things. At first, because I'd been ill, but then the strange privilege had never been revoked. We used the space together. He'd let me cuddle next to him and warm myself at his side. I'm always cold, but he'd never complained. never once denied me the simple affections when I'd asked, and I stopped myself before I can get any further down this train of thought. He found me a new owner, even made sure I would be with someone I already knew. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but I am thankful to at least know one other familiar in my new house, if that had indeed been his reasoning. There's some hysterical part of my mind that wants to laugh, that wants to cry and scream about how it's unfair, how this shouldn't be happening, how this is all wrong, how Kara should have at least given me some warning for this. But he had, hadn't he? The distance, the way he pushed me away, a dozen little things fall into place in my head, and the sudden clarity is baffling. My mind flashes to the moment yesterday when I'd asked him what he wanted me to remind him of, when he'd said it didn't matter. Was that it? Had he decided then that he would be rid of me? That I wouldn't be around to remind him when the time came? I bite into my lip. He'd been so affectionate that morning, so willing to put up with my inadequacies, with my casual disobediences. He hadn't even tried to punish me for the trouble I'd caused, or the way I'd flat out ignored his orders, actions, requests. Suddenly, I feel sick. Had it been me? Had I tipped the scales?
As I told you, I am your new master. Kara called me after Qualls and told me that if I still wanted you, we could make a deal.
Kalu explains in that same casual tone, and I have to pull together every scrap of my mental power to remember the situation I'm in as he leans in close and ever so gently brushes his thumb against my trembling lips. It all makes sense. It does. It wasn't just a lack of propriety. Kara wouldn't be that petty. He's ignored far greater problems in the past, even if this was something of a personal rule and preference. He only called after the results of Qualls came in. It was after the tests came in that his treatment changed, too. I'm just amazed that it took me so long to see it. After everything, the retraining, the new style of casting, and the thousands of little things that Kara's done for me, I'm still a low-ranked familiar.
I guess he needed a better familiar to get through the next few years.
Kalu's words match my own thoughts, and I'm halfway through nodding before I realize that my input probably wouldn't be appreciated. I'm still a common cat, still unsuitable for any mage, let alone one that's taken highest honors in Qualls. I understand that. It makes sense. I was never a good fit. I was never supposed to last here, especially when... No! My ears are ringing from the slap before I even realize that I've spoken out loud.
Now that was uncalled for,
Kalu says. His tone is still so casual, devoid of anger and only implying the faintest irritation at my actions, that I have to wonder if it was really necessary to hit me. It's a stupid, unnecessary thought that only reminds me how spoiled I am. He can hit me all he wants. He doesn't need a reason or to justify it to me.
"What do you say, Blue?"
he asks, sounding ever so faintly amused. I know the right answer. I need to apologize. It was uncalled for. I shouldn't have dared to question my master. I shouldn't have gone against him. I need to tell him that I am sorry for my actions, that I will never do it again, that I will curb this behavior myself and offer myself up for punishment if he so desires, if it will help me atone for my behavior in his eyes. I have to... Kara didn't sell me, I hear myself say instead. He didn't. He couldn't have. All the things we've done, the life we created together, he made me think about the future like I had one.
Why, this uppity little bit!
Catherine's cut off with a wave of Kalu's hand. I'm surprised that she would stop at his demand, even if he is higher ranked. She seems unhinged.
And Kara actually said this little whore was smart.
Jay chuckles, and I feel my face heat. Stars, I'm surprised that such an easy insult actually stings. It's been so long since I've had to listen to those kinds of words that the natural tolerance I've built up over a lifetime seems to have worn away. I don't get to feel disgusted. It's true. It's a waste of time to feel disturbed.
What? He gets off on you calling him by his name?
Jay taunts, and the grin that stretches across his face would make my stomach drop if his words hadn't already accomplished the task. Fuck! I said his name again. All I can do is shake my head, trying and failing to push past the pain in my throat, trying to make my mouth work.
Oh, he didn't?
Kalu asks, in a way that makes it very clear that he's not really asking.
Well then, do you? Because where I stand, you should be treating your masters with a little more respect, even if he was a sorry excuse for one.
He backhands me. Pain makes my vision a momentary flash of white, and I'm on the ground.
I mean, really, now I get why he was so eager. The man must know he needs something better to get him through the next few years. I can't believe this little toy got him this far.
Kalu laughs, and the others laugh with him. I feel my face heat. They're wrong. Master chose me. He chose me. Only, that's not right either. I was a dare. It had nothing to do with me. He would have walked right past me if he hadn't made that stupid bet with Shauna. I don't mean anything to him. Not really. Not beyond a first familiar that really should have died already anyways.
Listen,
Kalu says, moving so close to where I've fallen that I think he's actually going to step on me for a second.
This little show of loyalty, it's cute. The token resistance is fun. But it gets old real quick, kitty. You're mine now. So if you want to fight, that's fine. There's plenty of ways for me to have my fun, and I'm not picky.
I feel my heart jump to my throat. Living with Kara had been like a dream that I'd been stuck in so long that I actually forgot that I would have to wake up. I've deluded myself for long enough. I shouldn't be so eager to dig my own grave. Still, I can't help but be bitter as I think about it. Kara should have given me some warning. But he did, didn't he? It explains what he needed to do today so early. Of course he needed me out of the house while he set up this deal before going to meet with the in-laws. And it explains why Kalu and his little gang knew which house was Kara's, despite not having been invited out here before. If he'd really decided on this yesterday, there would have been a lot to do. I wonder if I'd meant to be grateful. He sent me off with Shauna and Ande today for one last day to say goodbye to everyone. I guess he thought I was smart enough to take his meaning. My chest burns at the thought, because I really was stupid. I thought it was just a little something that we could work out, something that might be fixed if I could just get in the same room with him and talk it out like Ande had suggested. Why would he waste his time? How could I have ever thought it would be any different? When did I stop fearing this as an inevitability? There have been masters that claimed to love me, masters who could hardly go full days without setting hands on me, masters that showed me off to their friends. But eventually, novelty wears off. Whatever attractive qualities started their infatuation grow dull as they witness them every day. It was a crippling cycle, but a cycle I was familiar with. My breath turns to ice in my lungs as I realize why I never really expected to leave this house. I didn't have any delusions of my being special, but I knew he wouldn't sell me. I didn't expect to stay here all that long, but I never thought it would be because of the sale of my papers. When I came to him, I was damaged beyond all reasonable thoughts of repair. No one would have accepted my papers. I thought that I'd die as a member of this house. Tears sting at the corners of my eyes, but I do my best to blink them back. Kara took so much time and energy. He healed me, tried to retrain me as it suited him, but in the end, my body's not a bag of bones anymore. I'm at a more respectable weight now. I'm back in practice with my dancing skill, and while my body is still marked, he took care of the more egregious scars. I should be grateful, but all I feel is betrayed. What did he fix me for, anyways? So another few can have their fun before I'm at death's door again? I want to be angry. I want to. But all I can feel is the coiling fear in my belly. Because that's it, isn't it? Kalu and his friends. They'll get bored eventually, and then it's off down the line. The market for scarred pets is not pretty. It won't take long for me to get back to how I was when Kara found me. Only this time, there won't be a rescue. There won't be a kind mage who got tricked into taking a less than worthless pet and training him for a life he isn't suited for. There will be none of that, and it will all be the worse, because no matter what, I will still have the memory. This is so much worse than Trainer. I can feel my world crumbling around me, but there's nothing I can do about it. Stars burn it all. I just want to feel safe. I just want a place in this world. Is that really such a terrible thing to ask for?
Hey, little tiger, you listening?
Kalu pulls me back to reality as his hands fist my hair, and I have to stifle a yelp at the sudden pressure. Yes, I respond automatically, trying to keep myself from shaking and babbling out apologies like a child.
Yes, what?
He asks coolly, and this time, I don't fight it. Yes, master, I answer. I will myself to let go of the feeling of betrayal. I don't have room for it anymore, and all of my attention should be going to my new master anyways. The world of strange rules and privileges that I'd lived in with Kara is melting away before my eyes, but I can't bring myself to mourn it. It was all just a dream anyways.